So hello and welcome to another episode of Inspired Good Fat Life. And I am so excited about our conversation today, our guest, because what Rachelle Willnus has to say is so relative. And actually, welcome, Rachelle.
Welcome, thank you.
So good. And the reason that she's on this show is because, and she's been a guest before. She does this amazing I'll call them derby hats, but I don't.
That's right.
Would that be the right
Yep,
term?
derby hats, perfect.
They are gorgeous, but we're not going to be talking about derby hats today. We're going to be talking about Rachel's journey with food and weight loss and all that goes with it. And I was so inspired by her posts and on Facebook that I was like, oh my gosh, who can't relate? And we need to have her on the show to be talking about what's going on. And before we start into our conversation, I have to make my shameless plug for Inspired Good Fat Life and our Good Fat Life magazine. We have an amazing new issue out, which is sold out at Barnes & Noble. So we've had to refresh, which is so cool, right? And there's lots of great articles and cool products. And we've got a really great self-care event going on for the first quarter, which I'll tell you about in a bit. Okay, so Rachelle, yes, tell us, how did this get started for you, and so you've lost like what?
I've lost over 27 pounds.
Wow,
yes.
That's a big deal.
It is a big deal, and I tell people I had to get sick to get healthy because it was becoming a slippery slope. I mean, like all of us, right? I dieted throughout the years and tried this, tried that fad, tried this. And what happened for me was I got, I had high blood pressure, I had high cholesterol. And then this last thing I got was diverticulosis. And I was in bed for over a month.
Oh, wow. That's in your colon, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. You get divots of, pockets in your colon and you can't eat certain foods and things like that. So I remember sitting in the CT scan and I'm waiting for my results. And I'm sitting in the waiting room going, if I don't have stomach cancer, I swear I will do everything I need to do. And when they said, yeah, you have this, you can manage it with diet, I thanked God and I did the work.
Okay.
I researched and studied and here I am.
So what was, so you have this diagnosis, and so how long ago was this?
This was in August of 2023.
Oh, okay. All right. And so what are the first steps that you took?
The first steps I took were, okay, this is bad. I'm in bed for a month. I could hardly move. So I started researching food.
Okay.
What can I actually eat? And the list seemed minimal because you're afraid, because if you eat something, will you have an attack or something like that? But the first thing I discovered was water. I know it sounds basic, but one of the key things for weight loss, for health, or anything is water, water, water. And electrolyte water, for me, was the best. I added freshly squeezed lemon, freshly squeezed lime, oranges, and I got liquid IV and I filled bottles and I kept them in the fridge and I made sure that I drank so many bottles a day.
So
right.
What's liquid IV?
Liquid IV is an electrolyte powder. You can get it at Costco. You can get it at Target. It's very, popular in terms of that. There's also Hydrate and other ones. And that changed how I was digesting food, how I felt throughout the day, and what I was starting to realize. And again, I'm not a doctor. What I call myself is a field expert.
Okay.
I'm out in the field trying it out. And it just made a world of difference because I was one of those thinking, okay, if things are getting trapped in pockets in my colon, if I just keep the river flowing, it won't get trapped. And that's the mindset I've been having is I eat. And the other thing is too, that I researched is, there's a lot of talk about how people fast. Mm-hmm. There's fasting. Mm-hmm. What I have found is that over age 50, there's not a lot of, talk about how you should eat. What I found with me successfully is that I eat more often throughout the day and I never let myself get hungry and I eat smaller portions.
And that works for you?
Yes.
Okay.
And I don't seem to have those sugar cravings.
Okay.
I think we all get those, like that 2:00 sugar crave that we get. We're like, okay, I'm crashing. It's 2:00. I find when I eat when I'm hungry and I eat smaller portions when I'm hungry, I don't have these cravings throughout the day. I don't get headaches. I don't have a lot of those things that I was having before. I was actually being present and listening to my body, right? Because like all overachievers, all of us, right? We go, yeah, I'm going to get up. I'm just going to get right into work. You skip breakfast. Then you think, oh, I'm good till noon. Then you're like, oh, just a few more hours. And before you know it, it's 8:00. You haven't eaten that day. And then you're gorging on everything. Now, you can't do that for a body when you're over 50.
Well, that's funny. So there's a couple of things that you've said that water is. You're right. Every single research study that I read, because I'm like you, and I'm working on my PhD, and it's in good fat, right? Yeah. Which is nutrition and body cycles of our food, etc. But water, yes, there's no disagreement that I've found about water.
That's right. And the other part too is one of the things that I have found that I think causes people to become unsuccessful at dieting is, you start like the first of the year, oh, this is my New Year's resolution. I'm going to do this. There's a mental component to eating that people think, oh, if I just watch my calories, my goal is I want to lose 20 pounds. Don't do any of that. I take each day at a time. I make healthy choices each day. Because if you're not addressing what's going on with you mentally, maybe there's a root cause, maybe there's a trauma, maybe there's a problem in your life that you're not addressing, or maybe you're just not present in your life. You really have to take the time to sit down and go, why am I failing at this? Because food can also be a comfort, right? When we have a bad day or when we're not feeling well, we're like, food is my comfort. And you have to train yourself to not think of food as a crutch, but as food to live and not as a desire.
So what's been some of your go-tos when, you've been doing this now since August?
Yes.
Okay, so you've probably gotten into new habits,
yes.
And this is becoming a way of life?
What I have found for me, yes, it's become a way of life. I get up and I start each day in a routine. I take personal time to focus on what am I grateful for. I know that sounds so like corny to do that.
It's huge.
Because I've heard people tell me that before. Oh, think of what you're grateful for. Yeah, whatever. Okay, I'm grateful, blah, blah, blah. But I actually do it now. I actually do all this. You do that, I'm like, oh, whatever. I actually get up.
We'll cycle back to that topic.
I actually get up and I go, okay, these are the things I'm grateful for.
Yeah.
And again, if you're I'm a spiritual person, but even if you're not, you have to think about there's a purpose that you are here. Okay. Mm-hmm. It's not to starve yourself or to help others or to constantly do this and not think of yourself. Okay.
Right.
So as long as you're helping others, but you're also helping yourself, that's what you need to do. Because if you starve yourself emotionally, you're going to start to starve yourself physically, and there's nothing left for you, and you just crash.
And it really goes, it's that airplane story.
Yes.
You have to put your mask on first.
You have to put your mask on first. That is so good, Sherri. And that's exactly what I do in the morning. I put my mask on first. That's a great way to say that.
Your air mask, right?
Yes. I journal. I read. I think about things I want to do that day. And, when you're an overachiever, right, it's always kind of like, what problem do I have to solve? I'm thinking, okay,
what do I have to get done today?
What do I have to get done? And you become a taskmaster and you forget that you're human. And I think one of the important things for me to do when I started my diary, the health journey online, was being vulnerable, because I think of myself as a successful professional. And I think some people think, oh, well, when someone's successful, they're not going through anything. And I think, you know what, if I can show people you can still be successful in life and you can still struggle and you can get past those struggles.
And that is so true. And you see it all the time. Like, just look at, case in point, the movie stars.
Right.
Or singers, or just people that are in the public. it's like they're so successful in this, and then their personal life's a disaster or whatever. And it's just a reminder that we're just all human.
Yes.
Right?
And you have to really assess, who are the people you're surrounding yourselves with?
Yeah.
What types of activities are you doing? Are you saying yes to everything? Now I actually think about, okay, I can't really do that. I can do this, but I can't do that. And setting boundaries, which I always say, never popular, always necessary. And you'll start to really discover who your tribe is. And I'll tell you, since I've started doing these self-corrections and making myself first and then doing these things, my anxiety has decreased dramatically. I sleep better. I think about myself more. And I don't mean that in a selfish way. It goes back to the face mask. You put your mask on first. And I realized that I was never even putting my mask on, nor even going towards the mask.
Right. Oh, it's fascinating. So one of the things that you'll love this we're doing with Good Pet Life is, I'd love to just be able to just go to my magazine. And go, here, this is what we're doing.
It's such a great magazine. I can see why you do that.
We're just having so much fun. But this we have it's a 60-day self-care challenge. Right. And so you color an avocado each day. But the point is to spend 15 minutes a day, 15 minutes. That's all. It's like everybody can find it, and do something that promotes self-care for you. And you get to decide. And I really was deliberate in not saying this is not about exercise. It's not about food. It's not about mind, body, meditation, anything. It's like, and it can be different every day. And part of it, Rachelle, is just to your point you just raised, is to help us become aware of where we are or aren't taking those little self-care baby steps.
Well, I found too, now that I'm 53, oh gosh, I really did say that live on air here. I find that over 50, we really have to take those moments for self-care and recognize, even if we don't like it, that our body is slowing down a little bit. And we have to be more mindful, because I always say once the hormones exit the building, it's like going outside without an ozone. You're on your own now, right? You got to figure it out. Okay, now I got to make better choices with food because, the estrogen isn't there to, help me out. I know that's probably a lot of
No, but you're so right. It's so funny you say that, because I was talking with my nutritionist yesterday, and we were talking about muscle mass. Mm-hmm. Right. And as we age, our muscle mass decreases. Yes. But estrogen carries a role in that. And so why it's so important to do strength building exercises for
Totally. Exercising, lifting weights, even if you're just doing hand weights, and you have to mix it up. Like now I exercise, I do something every day. Yeah. And when I do the hand weights, if I'm doing something, say for 1 or 2 weeks, then maybe I'll add a repetition to the sets that I'm doing. And then after 2 weeks, I change that routine entirely. Because when you work the same muscles constantly, you're not losing weight anymore. You're just bulking. And that actually brings me to a point. I wanted to, I had a couple things here that I want to do, list to remember, for the audience here. One was we talked about the water. The other thing, which is really helpful, and you and I kind of touched on this earlier before we went on air, was ginger. And one of the things that I found for anti-inflammatory, which, because a lot of us over 50, I suffer from this, is the belly, right? We're like, okay, we feel bloated or we feel whatever. Ginger and turmeric, raw ginger, raw turmeric, boiled in water, add a green tea bag, some lemon, some lime. You drink that all day, you'll start to see
You just sip on it?
You sip on it.
Okay.
You talked about apple cider vinegar earlier, which is an excellent thing to add. Pineapple boiled in water, just the rinds, and you can drink that.
Oh, really? Mm-hmm. I haven't heard that one.
And then one of the things that I've done with diverticulosis is a Mediterranean diet. And by that is basically lots of vegetables, but I've eliminated red meat completely. sugar, minimal sugar, because I have found that those things, that to me is when I really started to lose the weight. And I'll be honest with you, when I started cutting out some of these things, I didn't feel as foggy in my mind. And I know it sounds like, oh, yeah, she cut all that out. Like I said, I had to get sick to get better. It was a gateway. You know, have high blood pressure. Then it was cholesterol. Now I have diverticulosis. I'm thinking,
hello, it's like what's going to get for your poor body.
Right.
I mean, and all of us, I'd say, we put our bodies through this hell and then wonder why we don't feel great.
Yes.
And then, but our bodies are saying, hey, pay attention to me.
That's right. You have to do the work. And that's, and then the other thing I found that's great, especially for brains over 50, is salmon.
Mm.
And some people say, well, it's just, it's not like, salmon that maybe it's from a pond or a fishery or something like that. There are different qualities of salmon in those things, and you can get the best quality salmon, even if it's just from a fishery. And then one thing which I had to watch was aspirin and ibuprofen. As we get older, over 50, we have to watch how much of that we're actually taking, because that wreaks havoc on our digestive completely. And then also I have taking breaks. Take breaks when you need them. I'm infamous, and I know many of your listeners are, all these high achievers, especially during Derby time in the spring. I'm like sewing 20 hours a day. I kid you not.
Wow.
I've fallen asleep actually with a sewing needle in my hand. Right? So that's when I'm like, okay, you can run yourself into the ground, and then that's when you get these conditions because you're not being mindful. And then the other thing I had here is just, we talked a little bit about it, is avoid fasting. A lot of people are on these, well, I'm going to fast for, 10 or 12 hours and then I'll eat. You can't do that after 50.
Well, let me I'm going to give a caveat to that, because the intermittent fast works really well for me.
Yeah. See, for me, it doesn't. Maybe because of the diverticulosis, I can't.
Maybe. But I only eat between noon and 8.
Mm-hmm.
And it works. And if I'm really mindful to eat like a vegetable, like a salad or a vegetable, and then I eat a protein with a fat and then a carb, in that order, I'm fine. But what we're bringing up is something that comes up over and over, which I think is so important, is we have to figure out what works for us.
That is so right. You have to figure out what works for you, because you mentioned something about 12 to 8. It's really critical to not eat late into the evening, to have the snacking. I totally am on board with that. Right. So I guess if it would be considered fasting, you don't eat after, say, 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock or something like that.
For our lifestyle, right?
Yes, because it's just so hard on your digestion.
But I had a really hard time with doing that forever until I told you I got a glucose monitor.
Yeah.
Right? So, and I'm not diabetic, but diabetes runs in my family. And I wanted to see how my blood sugar is, right? Because it's the spiking that you want to avoid. You want to stay flat. And the apple cider vinegar. So I take that 10 minutes before I eat a meal. And damn, Rachelle, if that hasn't, after I eat, so I take that, I eat my dinner, and, like I said, and it's got a fat and a protein and some carb and fiber in it, a good, a healthy carb. And I just don't feel like snacking. And it wasn't like, because my willpower wasn't going to keep me from snacking, right? But it's the food and the balanced blood sugar that's keeping me from snacking. So anyways, and then that makes you sleep better, and then you wake up refreshed, and then everything is easier. Your brain's clearer. It's and I brought this book. I do want to do a shout out for this book, the Glucose Goddess Method. She's got some amazing things in there, and just full on disclosure, I've always wanted to have a flask. Right, I showed you that.
We share a lot on the show.
Yeah,
lots to learn.
A lot, yeah, exactly. I always wanted to have a flask. I just, I like alcohol, and in moderation, right? Everything in moderation. But I always thought it was just cool to have a flask. But I just thought, no, that's just too much. But how to carry my apple cider vinegar out with me when I'm not at home before meals has been a challenge. It's like what to do. So I went to the health food store and they said, here, you can take these capsules. And, I can, but I forget to take them and it's no fun. But she recommends a flask for your apple cider vinegar.
Right.
It's just like...
And then convincing your friends that there really is only apple cider vinegar in my flask. Yeah.
Right. And I was doing some research earlier today and I saw an apple cider vinegar with ginger and lemon in it. So I ordered some. We'll see.
Yes.
We'll see, right? But I think, what we're talking about here is finding a way to have fun with it.
Yes.
So it's not like, oh, poor me, I can't do this X, Y, and Z. It's like, oh my gosh, it's the opportunity to explore new stuff.
Well, you made a really good point earlier. It really is what works for you.
Yeah.
Right? It's like taking the tips. You really have to do the research because everyone eats differently. Everyone thinks differently. So whatever the mental things that you're working on are going to be addressed differently than, say, how we're working on certain things.
Right.
Or you may have certain conditions, health conditions that you have to be mindful of. So everybody's going to have something different. The common thread is you really have to read the labels on food.
So true.
Really, really read. Do your research like this book that you're sharing. Read things that are really addressing the issues that you have. And sometimes you really have to get honest with yourself. That's the hard part.
Like, what's one of your...
Oh, I had to really sit down because I'm one of those like, I'm doing this great and this is great. And I'm like, oh, no, I'm really not doing that great. I could really be better. Oh no, all of these things are turning up to be my problem. Oh no, that's not me, So it was
but
really,
it is.
right, exactly. And that's the thing where you take accountability and be responsible for the things that you're doing in your life that you need to change. And when you find these little revelations and you're thinking, that's not my fault, that's something else. And you go, oh no, here we go. Now the real work starts. And that's when you are honest with yourself and you get vulnerable. And I'll tell you, it's very freeing to take accountability and responsibility for yourself. That's when I felt, honest to goodness,
gives me chills.
Right?
Yeah.
I felt free to go, oh my gosh, I gave myself permission to be human.
Mm. So
wow.
One of those, I get it. Because one of those moments came to me this week, like I said, with the monitor and everything. And I was talking with my nutritionist and she's like, the thing that's really the most important here, now that you're getting all this understanding, is weight training and resistance. And to your point, I'm kind of like, I'm doing this. And I'm like, not so much.
Right?
Not so much.
Right?
So,
it's those truths that come out that we have to face. And again, you don't have to tell people what they are, but even if you just write it down and you look it in the face and then just rip it up and throw it away, you will be so free and you will start to heal yourself because you'd be like, oh my gosh, I'm my own worst enemy. And when you see that and you look at it and you give yourself permission to say, you know what, it's okay that I did that.
Right.
Because I'm human.
Right.
And now you go, okay, I can do that.
But you can't go back.
You cannot go back. Once you see it, you can't unsee it.
Yeah.
Right? Once you see it going, oh yeah, I can't unsee that now. I got to do that. I can't blame someone else or I can't look somewhere else. I can't really eat that and say I didn't.
Yeah.
Right? Oh, I didn't eat that, or I only ate a little bit of that, and it's like 6 chocolate bars are gone. You can't do, you can't do that anymore. But it's so freeing when you start to see it's okay to be human. The age of perfectionism is so last year. I love that. The year of the human is upon us, right?
The year of the human.
The year of the human. Being vulnerable, it's perfect.
Well, and so in that vulnerability, and that was one of the reasons why I'm like, I wanted to, have this conversation with you and share what you're learning with our community, because that's true. And we can help each other.
Yes.
So I immediately called a trainer that I had worked with 10 years ago. And so we're going to meet in 2 weeks, because I know I will not do it on my own.
That's right.
I just know I won't. And I know I'll find every excuse in the book. And now, again, and I can't go back.
That's right.
So how can I my questions now are, how can I set myself up to be successful knowing that this has to happen?
The key too is like you, I mean, I've had coaches, I've had online support groups, different things. Know your people that are supporting the new you. You know, that's important. You'll have some people that are like, okay, I missed this, or I want that. That's great. And you could say, okay, thank you for that time, because you grow. And then you look at your new life and you say, okay, this is the path I'm supposed to be on. Because we're supposed to grow as humans, right? We're supposed to change, and we're supposed to do that. And so it's having people that support that, and reaching out to people saying, hey, I could use some help with this.
Well, and I saw you in a post, and you were in a gym or something with weights.
Oh,
and
yeah.
And I was like, yeah, okay. Build community,
yes.
right?
Yes, exactly. Because I think, and I was a person who, you know, I would still like to lose weight, but I don't look at it anymore as, oh, I'd like to lose another 20 pounds. I don't set those goals, because I think mentally we can process that as unattainable. But if we get
or I'm not, there's something wrong with me until I get there.
Bingo.
Yeah.
There's something. That's where the mental part comes in there, because we think, because what we're a physical world, right? We're judged a lot on our appearance. So we think, okay, that part of it is I'm not enough until I get there.
Right.
You hit such a nail on the head, because when you think like that, then the self-hate starts.
Right.
And you think I'm defined by what I look like, not who I am.
Or that little voice goes.
Little voice.
And it diminishes the quality of your day.
Of course.
Right? And it's not even like blanking at, well, sometimes it is, but it can just be kind of insidious.
Oh,
right?
So insidious.
And so it's like we don't really know why the day doesn't feel amazing, because it is on so many levels. But there's this little thing that's like, well, until I hit this weight or whatever,
right,
I'm not quite enough.
And start slow. Like when I first went to the gym, and I'm like, okay, that was one of my accountability things. Like, oh, I have to lift the weights. Okay. I can't just walk the track. Right? Okay, over 50, doctor's like, you should lift the weights. I'm like, oh, yay, great. I have to do that. So I started slow with like 3-pound weights.
Okay.
And now I'm up to 10-pound weights.
Oh, good.
And I just increase the reps. And I think, my gosh, I didn't say, oh, I want to get to this weight or that. Right. I just added a little bit more. What can I do this day? And when you break it into those pockets, you can do it. When you just think about it each day. Instead of like, oh, yeah. Yeah, like, okay, in 5 months from now, I'm going to have that. Every time I do that, I'm like, no way. There's no way I'm going to do that. And I failed every time. And now I think it was really sitting down and identifying first, like if somebody really wanted to get on the journey.
Right, that's my question. Where would somebody start?
The first thing that you have to do is you've got to do the mental prep. You have to look at why do I keep failing every time when I'm trying to lose weight? You have to do the work on yourself. What mistakes am I doing regularly? Like, for example, me, I can't work 15 hours and not eat. Or, wow, why is this happening? Why is that happening? And in every situation where I thought something was preventing me, oh, something else is doing this or someone else. I had a hand in everything that was a problem for me. And once I have identified that I'm part of the issue, then I knew I had control.
Well, one of my, to that point is, I'll say something, my husband will say, well, what about blah, blah, blah. And I go, well, I just don't have time to do that. And he'll look at me and he goes, who sets your schedule?
Right.
Right?
That's exactly it.
Oh, busted.
Right. And you know what? You do that with yourself. Every time you're like, oh, I'm busted now.
Right.
Because I have to do. But what's freeing about it, we talked about freeing earlier, what's freeing is that when you recognize that you have control, then you realize I am responsible, I'm accountable, and actually I can take action on that.
Because I'm the one who sets my schedule.
That's right.
Yeah.
The blame game is over.
Yeah.
You're up. And you do that, right? And then you start to think about, like my coach Kelly told me, what are your values? And I thought, what are my values? Oh no, another hard question. I have to do the work again. I have to sit down. So I wrote, what do I value? And one was family, grandchildren. We talked about that earlier. Well, if I want to be alive for grandchildren, guess what I got to do? The work.
Well, and
get yourself to the gym, lift the weights, because I see myself playing with my grandchildren. That's not going to happen if I don't get there. And I didn't want to go, hey, why is grandma not with us? Well, she couldn't get her butt to the gym. Right? I mean, I'm breaking it down sarcastically, but that's how I got myself motivated, because I'm like, you have, like we were talking about, you have to laugh about this stuff.
Right. Well, you'd be proud of me. So my grandson turned 7 this past week, and we were in Texas, and he had a roller derby party.
Yeah.
We went to the roller rink. And I'm like, okay, I'm getting on the skates, right? But on the other hand, it brought back that memory of when we were kids and we'd go to the roller rink and they just played all this great music and it was so much fun. And it was like, yeah, I want, when I'm 90, I want to be that grandma that can just be, hey, I'm not just going to sit here and watch. I'm part of it.
That's right. You can't do the work physically until you do the work mentally.
That's a great point.
Because you don't know where to start, because you don't know where the root cause of the issue is. My coach Kelly said, what is the root cause? That's the hard work, because you have to keep asking yourself, one, what are you self-sabotaging yourself with?
Right.
Because we'll do that, right? Like, when your husband's talking about your schedule, oh, I can't do that. And he's like, well, who sets your schedule?
Right.
And you're like, oh man, again, it's me, right?
Busted. Yeah.
So you have to really sit down and think about, what do you value? How are you self-sabotaging yourself? And my coach Kelly's amazing. And people want that. I can always share it. But those are the things that you have to identify, and then do the physical work, and you have to exercise, and you have to eat right. All that stuff that people have been telling you your whole life, you have to do all that. You've got to read the labels, and you have to drink the water. Have to drink the water.
Well, so there's a couple of things I want to cycle back to is what you said about having a coach is huge. Is none of us can do this by ourselves.
No, because you don't know what questions to ask yourself.
Right.
Like the question she was asking, I'm like, oh man, I don't want to do that. And then I'd sit down and do it and go,
oh, I can see why I did that. Right.
Right. I'm like, how much of your life you own? Like some people will say, well, you know what? I had family that was, obese, and I'm going to be like that. You have control because you are an individual. And food can be your friend or your enemy, but it's there to help you, and
it's to fuel you.
It's right? to fuel you. And there's so many things, and roots and vegetables, lots of green. I'm not a big fan of the greenery. We've got to do the green.
Well, you'll love this though. My husband hates vegetables, right?
Oh, I'm with,
but he loves his grandchildren. And he loves his grandchildren. And so we were in Hawaii and we renewed our vows a couple years ago. It was so sweet. But it wasn't like the vows we took originally. It was more like, how do we want to live going forward? Yeah. And he goes, to your point, I want to be around to see the grandchildren and be physically able to do this stuff. So I'm going to eat vegetables every day.
Right? That's
and
the
he
thing.
does.
You have to have the motivator. You have to really want it for yourself. Something has to trigger you. Right. Because, even people listening to this are going, yeah, whatever. I tried all that or what. You have to be ready.
You do.
You have to be ready to make the change. If you're not ready, it won't happen.
So stop beating yourself up about it.
So stop beating yourself up. When you're ready, something will trigger it. Like me in the CT scan, your husband with the greens, something will trigger it and say, it's enough now.
Yeah. I pulled a card. I was at a workshop this last week that was fabulous. And and the truth is, I really didn't want to go. It was snowing. It was cold. I was like, oh, I don't want to go. And I'm so glad I went, because back to community, being with people. But I pulled this card and it said, procrastination can be a sign of listening to your intuition. And I like that in the sense of, when we're not ready, we're not ready.
That's so true.
You can't make yourself be ready.
You cannot. You cannot do it. And because honestly, I'm a firm believer in, we all know that we should be eating healthy. We all know that, right? Everybody knows, oh yeah, eating healthy, you can become healthy. But we have so many things coming at us all the time, which is why you really need to pause yourself and stop and go, what am I doing every day? Like when I started doing the mental work, I would say probably 70% of what I was focusing my time on didn't serve any kind of meaningful purpose for myself. And I don't even know if it was serving anything really meaningful elsewhere. It was, I don't know, ego-based or whatever. And I thought, these are the things that can go. And now I'm making room for other things.
That's a really good point.
I mean, that's
a really good point.
Because until you really sit down, like we'll say we're busy when you're doing 20 errands a day and you're thinking, okay, just to break it down as an example, when you start to do the mental work, you start to see, okay, these are the 20 things I did today. 18 of them weren't necessary. And then when you start to really do that work, you're starting to see, oh yeah, I really could have gone to the gym today. I'm running myself into the ground for what? Because don't you think like sometimes we get on like robotic mode? We just get up, we do our thing, we make our excuses, we visit our thing, we come home, and then we're like, oh, whatever. Right?
Or it's easy. Yeah. It's easy to just be in that pattern. So one of the things you mentioned was reading labels. So what do you look for now when you read a label?
This is the thing you look for when you read the label. We know what sugar is. We know what cream is. Okay. Polysorbate 685. I don't know what that is. And guess what? Your body doesn't know what it is. I mean, I'm not a doctor, but the stuff I've read is like when you ingest stuff like that, your body will say, okay, I can process sugar. I can process a cream. I can process, water, things like that. What it does is when it sees like, say, polysorbate 185, it goes, oh, I don't know what it is. Let's store that in case we need it. So all of those, additives get stored in your body, which is why we have inflamed guts. We have bad bacteria in our system. This is what is going on. All of those additives are creating fat stores within our body. And again, I'm not a doctor, but I've read enough to know that those things are being stored and not released from our body. So you have to read the label. Not all pasta is created equal. Sauces, things like that. Watch the sodium. Watch, red meats. There's a lot of things that are injected, chemicals, sulfites, in red meats and things like that. So just really look at the labels. And again, we talked about what's individual, what's good for each person. When you go to your doctor, they'll tell you, okay, these are the things that are going on with you or whatever. Then be mindful and cater that to your own individual thing. If your doctor says you absolutely can't have sugar, it's a huge no-no. Then you're going to have to start reading labels and say, okay, this has this peanut butter, for example. Say if you're a Jif person, you love Jif peanut butter loaded with sugar, let's say, okay? You're like, oh, I could do oat butter or some other type of almond butter. And you go,
hazelnut butter.
Hazelnut butter. And
there's some delicious stuff out there.
This is a great time to be healthy and to read things because there's so many alternatives. So if you can't eat Jif, you can do almond butter.
And you get used to it.
You get used to it. And so there are other things where you can still enjoy the stuff you love and not have, and again, there's an adjustment period. Right? There's an adjustment where you're like, oh, it just doesn't taste as good as my other one. Your body will adjust and you'll start to feel better. The brain fog goes away. I know this because it's happened to me. I feel like clearer now, but those are the types of things you have to look at when you're reading labels. Find alternatives to the stuff you love And that's the research you have to do.
Well, and what I'm finding is there's so many delicious things out there.
Right.
Right? We get stuck, like you said, we get stuck in this pattern or this habit thinking we have to have this, but there's lots of other options. And for me, that's kind of like my brain's like, oh, this is really fun. Let's go. Let's get curious.
That's right.
Get curious about what's out there. So,
right. And if you're a person that absolutely could never get rid of red meat, let's just say that's who you are, because that was a choice I made. But then you look for healthier.
I love red. I was raised on a cow farm,
exactly.
but I eat grass fed.
Right. And so you look for the higher end meats.
Yeah.
You know, those are the things that, like for me, digestively, it's difficult with the diverticulosis. But if you're someone that just in general, your doctor's like, well, you really should watch the red meat, you get the higher end red meat. You don't just get the ground chuck that's off brand or whatever. You get the higher end grass fed that you know is good. And then those habits start to become habits. But where I don't want people to lose momentum is when you are doing that research up front, just know that it's difficult, but you will get past it. And it is worth it, because I'm proof. And I'll tell you, I don't take any supplements or anything like that. I've lost this weight just by making those changes to diet and doing the mental work. And that is really where it's at. And I make it a daily practice. I'm seeing if I can do it.
I know what you're saying, because I feel the same way. If I can do it, anybody can
and that's
do
probably
it,
why you responded like, wow, Rachelle's doing. Oh, well, there must be something.
No. It wasn't
I'm always like, that's crap. No, I'm not going to do that. That's crap. Organic, whatever. And then when I really got on board with it, I'm like, oh my gosh, there really is something to this, because it's working.
Well, and we'll just finish on that point, because that's what I'm learning with my own journey too. And it's like, since I started eating vegetables as my first part of the meal, I've lost 6 pounds. Right?
That's amazing.
But it's just changing up the order of how the food goes in. And it's in the literature if you read it, but you have to find the right literature first. And also, I'm kind of like, I gotta see how it works for me. And then it was like I was noticing this, and then with my blood sugar, it was just so much evener. And my nutritionist said,
when you mentioned this book that you brought, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but this is a good example of what you're saying. Is this book has a lot of humor.
Yeah.
So you should find those resources like you did. Like, you're going to respond to this because it makes you laugh.
Right. And I'm trying, when I do these things, it's like I try these things and it's like, that works for me. It's not just blah, blah, blah. Right. Because there's just so much of that out there. But anyways, so it's been such a joy to have you today.
I feel like we could talk all afternoon. We're always like that, right?
We could. And there's just so much to all this. And, and I love that you're embracing and enjoying the adventure, right? And, and Derby's coming up.
Yeah, 150th Kentucky Derby. And I'll tell you, I've been busy since November. And I've got a full spring already, and I've been sewing every day, but being mindful of my breaks.
There you go. I know. I have it on my phone to beep me every hour I get up and like at least run up and down the stairs.
That's great.
It's just 2 minutes, but it does make a difference.
It does.
Yeah. So anyway, on that happy note, I want to do a quick shout out to our sponsor. So, Snedecor's Cleaners. So my son found a vintage Letterman's jacket from the U of O. We're Oregon Duck fans. And so I brought it home. He gave it to me, and I brought it home, and I put it in my bag, in my yellow bag on the porch. They picked it up, and I've restored it to this beautiful kind of like as new thing, and I will treasure it and then hand it down to my granddaughters because they are up and coming duck fans, right? So there's just something, again, in self-care when you have these people and these companies in your life that I know, love, and trust, because they take exquisite care of my clothes, and they do it in a way that makes it so easy for me to have that service. And I can't imagine life without Snedecor's Cleaners. So thank you. And thank you.
Thank you for having me.
For being here. And I'm just so excited for both of us to see where we are 3 months from now.
I know.
Although we're just taking it one day at a time.
That's right.
Right?
That's right.
So
it's a lifestyle.
It is a lifestyle, and really that's the way
a good fat lifestyle.
A good, yes, exactly. Good for you. And look at good fat is sexy. That's one of the articles in this, because it is.
It is.
It has such a huge impact on our hormones and all that goes with that. So that's good. So go out and have a great good fat day.